I woke up at 5 that morning, my stomach churning with excitement and nerves. The hotel room was still dark, but I couldn't sleep anymore. Today was the day I'd been dreaming about since I was a little girl playing dress-up in my grandmother's old wedding veil. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, hoping to see good morning messages from Mom or Sarah, my sister. Maybe even a silly meme from my cousin Jake, who always knew how to make me laugh when I was stressed. Nothing. Just notifications from the florist confirming delivery and a text from my maid of honor asking if I needed anything. I told myself they were probably just sleeping in, getting ready for the big day ahead. Mom had seemed distant during the rehearsal dinner, barely saying 2 words during the toasts, but I figured she was just tired from all the wedding planning stress. The ceremony was set for 2 o'clock at Riverside Gardens, this beautiful venue overlooking the Hudson River that David and I had fallen in love with the moment we saw it. We'd booked it almost a year ago, and I'd sent the invitations 3 months early to make sure everyone could make arrangements. Mom had confirmed she was coming, so had Sarah and her husband Mark. Even my aunts from Connecticut had RSVP'd yes. By noon, I was in the bridal suite getting my hair done, surrounded by my bridesmaids who kept telling me how radiant I looked. But I kept checking my phone, waiting for some sign from my family. The ceremony was in 2 hours, and I hadn't heard a word from any of them. I called Mom twice, but it went straight to voicemail both times. When I walked down the aisle on my father-in-law's arm, since my own dad had passed away 3 years earlier, I couldn't help but scan the rows of guests. David's family filled the left side of the chapel, smiling and wiping away happy tears. The right side, where my family should have been sitting, looked painfully sparse. A few college friends, some co-workers, my high school English teacher who'd become like a second mother to me over the years. But the front row, the seats I'd specifically reserved with little white ribbons that said "reserved for family," sat completely empty. During the vows, I tried to focus on David's face, on the love I saw there, on the promises we were making to each other. But my eyes kept drifting to those empty seats, and I felt this hollow ache growing in my chest. After we kissed and everyone cheered, David squeezed my hand and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded and smiled, but inside I was falling apart. The reception was a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts. David's Aunt Margaret kept asking where my mother was, and I made up some excuse about a last-minute emergency. His cousin Tommy wanted to know if he'd get to meet my famous sister, the one who worked in marketing in Boston. I mumbled something about travel complications and changed the subject. That night in our hotel suite, still wearing my wedding dress because I couldn't bring myself to take it off, I finally opened Instagram. Maybe they'd posted something, some explanation for why they'd disappeared on my wedding day. The first photo I saw was Mom's post from that afternoon. She was standing in front of Big Ben in London, wearing a bright yellow sundress and that smile she used to save for special occasions. The caption read, "Spontaneous adventure with my favorite travel buddy." Sarah had posted too. She was holding a pint of beer at some pub, laughing with Mark and Mom. When Mom suggests a surprise trip to London, you don't say no. Best mother-daughter bonding ever. I stared at my phone screen until the words blurred together. They hadn't just missed my wedding. They'd chosen to go on vacation instead. While I was saying my vows, they were sightseeing in another country. While I was celebrating what should have been the happiest day of my life, they were treating it like any other Saturday, not worth remembering or being present for. The posts kept coming over the next week, each one like a small slap across the face. Mom at the Tower of London, posing with the Beefeaters. Sarah shopping on Oxford Street, her arms full of designer bags. The 3 of them having afternoon tea at Claridge's. Mom making her funny face at the camera, while Sarah and Mark laughed behind their teacups. I tried to stay off social media, but I couldn't help myself. It was like picking at a scab, painful, but somehow addictive. Every photo felt deliberate, like they were rubbing it in my face. Look how fun we're having without you. Look what you're missing. Look how little your wedding mattered to us. David found me crying over my laptop one morning, staring at a video Sarah had posted of them riding the London Eye. He didn't say anything, just closed the laptop gently and pulled me into his arms. I could feel his anger in the tension of his shoulders, but he never said a bad word about my family. He was better than I deserved. Work was torture. Everyone wanted to hear about the honeymoon, see wedding photos, ask about my family. I'd practiced my responses in the mirror like lines from a play. "Oh, you know how families are. Everyone's so busy these days. They had some last-minute conflicts, but they sent their love. We're planning a small celebration with them when they get back." The lies felt heavy in my mouth, but what was I supposed to say? That my own mother had chosen a vacation over my wedding? That my sister, who I'd shared a room with for 18 years, who knew all my secrets and fears, had decided I wasn't worth showing up for? That they'd made this choice together, planned it together, and were now posting about it like it was the greatest adventure of their lives? 2 weeks after the wedding, Mom finally called. Not to apologize or explain, just casual conversation like nothing had happened. "How was the honeymoon?" she asked, as if she'd been at the wedding waving goodbye when we left for our trip to Maine. I was so shocked I actually answered, told her about the little bed and breakfast we'd stayed at, the lobster rolls we'd eaten on the beach. "That sounds lovely, honey," she said in that distracted tone she used when she was doing something else while talking. "We just got back from London. What an incredible city. Sarah and I had the best time." She talked for 10 minutes about their trip, the museums they'd visited, the shows they'd seen, the adorable little hotel in Covent Garden where they'd stayed. Not once did she mention missing my wedding. Not once did she ask how I felt about them not being there. It was like the wedding had never happened, like it was just some minor event they'd unfortunately had to skip. When I finally worked up the courage to bring it up, to say, "Mom, I was really hurt that you weren't at my wedding," she sighed like I was being dramatic. "Oh, sweetie, you know how these things go. Sarah had been wanting to visit London for ages, and when we found those cheap flights, it just seemed like perfect timing. I knew you'd understand. You've always been so independent." Independent. That was her code word for, "You don't need us, so we don't need to show up for you." I'd been hearing it my whole life. When I graduated valedictorian and she missed the ceremony because Sarah had a soccer tournament. When I got my first job and she forgot to call because Sarah was having boyfriend drama. When I bought my first apartment and she was too busy planning Sarah's birthday party to come see it. I'd always understood before. I'd always made excuses for them, told myself that Sarah needed more attention because she was more sensitive, more dramatic. But this was my wedding. This was supposed to be different. After I hung up the phone, I sat in my kitchen staring at the wedding photos scattered across the table. David and I looked so happy, so in love. But looking at them now, all I could see were the empty spaces where my family should have been, the missing people in the family portraits, the silence where my mother's toast should have been, the absence that had shaped my entire wedding day. Life started to feel normal again about a month later. David and I had settled into married life, finding our rhythm with morning coffee together and evening walks around our neighborhood in Brooklyn. I'd almost stopped checking Mom and Sarah's social media accounts, almost stopped feeling that sharp pain when someone mentioned family. I was learning to be okay with just having David's family, who had welcomed me with open arms and never once made me feel like an outsider. Then my phone rang on a Tuesday evening while I was making dinner. Mom's name flashed on the screen, and my heart did that stupid little jump it always did when she called. Even after everything. Maybe this was it, I thought. Maybe she was finally calling to apologize, to explain, to make things right between us. "Hi, sweetie," she said. But her voice sounded different, strained, businesslike. "How are you doing?" "I'm good, Mom. How are you?" I turned down the heat on the stove and gave her my full attention, hoping this was the conversation we should have had weeks ago. "Well, that's actually why I'm calling." She paused, and I could hear Sarah's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. "We're having some financial difficulties right now, and I was wondering if you might be able to help us out." The words hit me like cold water. Not an apology, not an explanation, a request for money. "What kind of difficulties?" I asked, though part of me already knew where this was going. "The London trip ended up costing more than we expected," Mom said, and I could hear Sarah giggling about something in the background. The hotels, the restaurants, all those shows we went to. Plus Sarah's been having some trouble with her job, and Mark's hours got cut back at the construction company. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles going white. They were asking me to pay for the vacation they'd taken instead of coming to my wedding. The vacation they'd flaunted on social media while I was trying to explain to my friends and coworkers why my own family hadn't bothered to show up. How much do you need? I heard myself asking, falling back into the old pattern of just fixing things, just making problems go away. Well, we're behind on the mortgage by about $3,000, and the credit card bills from the trip are pretty steep. Maybe $5,000 total would help us get back on track. Mom's voice got that wheedling tone she used when she was asking for favors, sweet and apologetic, but somehow entitled at the same time. Sarah's voice got louder in the background, and suddenly she was on the phone too. Hey, sis, Mom's got you on speaker. God, London was amazing. You would have loved it. We went to this incredible restaurant in Notting Hill, and the shopping was insane. I got the cutest dress at Selfridge's. She was talking about the trip like it was something we'd all planned together, like I should be happy for them. Like she'd forgotten entirely that they'd chosen this vacation over my wedding. That sounds great, I managed to say, my voice sounding strange and distant even to my own ears. Anyway, Mom jumped back in. We know you and David are doing well, and you've always been so good about helping out when we need it. We'd pay you back as soon as things stabilize, of course. Of course. Just like they'd paid me back the $2,000 I'd lent them for Sarah's wedding 3 years ago. Just like they'd paid me back the money for Mom's car repairs, or the deposit I'd covered for Sarah's first apartment, or any of the dozens of other times I'd opened my wallet to solve their problems. I looked around my kitchen, at the wedding photos still stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, at the thank you cards I'd been writing to the people who had actually shown up to celebrate with us. David walked in from his shower, took one look at my face, and raised his eyebrows in concern. Can I call you back? I said into the phone. I need to talk to David about it. Of course, honey. But if you could let us know soon, that would be great. The mortgage company isn't very patient. You know how it is. After I hung up, David sat down next to me at the kitchen table. Everything okay? I told him about the call, watched his face grow darker as I explained what they wanted. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You know you don't owe them anything, right? He said finally. Especially not after what they did. I nodded, but inside I was wrestling with years of conditioning. I was the responsible one, the successful one, the one who cleaned up everyone else's messes. That's how it had always been, and that's what they expected now. But something felt different this time. Something had shifted when they'd missed my wedding, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. I called Mom back the next evening after work. David was sitting at the kitchen counter grading papers, his red pen moving steadily across student essays. But I could tell he was listening. I'd spent the whole day thinking about what I wanted to say, practicing different versions in my head during my commute. Hi, Mom, I said when she picked up. I've been thinking about what we talked about yesterday. Oh, good, honey. We were hoping you'd be able to help. Sarah's been so stressed about the mortgage, and you know how anxiety affects her stomach problems. There it was again. Sarah's needs, Sarah's problems, Sarah's everything taking precedence over anyone else. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. Actually, I wanted to talk about something else first. About my wedding. Silence on the other end. Then Mom's voice, a little sharper than before. What about it, Emma? You weren't there. None of you were there. The words came out quieter than I'd intended, but they were out there now, hanging in the air between us. Sweetie, we explained about the London trip. It was just unfortunate timing. Unfortunate timing? My voice was getting stronger now, fueled by weeks of suppressed hurt. Mom, you knew about my wedding for almost a year. I sent you the save the date in January. You RSVP'd, yes. You helped me pick out the flowers. Well, yes. But when Sarah found those flight deals and she'd been so depressed about her job situation, we thought a little trip would cheer her up. You're married now, you have David. Sarah needed us more. There it was, the truth I'd been avoiding for weeks. Sarah needed them more. Sarah would always need them more. And I would always be expected to understand, to be the mature one, to put everyone else's needs before my own. I needed you too, I said, and my voice cracked a little. It was my wedding day, Mom. The most important day of my life, and you chose a vacation instead. Now you're being dramatic. It's just one day, Emma. The marriage is what matters, not some big expensive party. Just one day. My wedding was just one day to her. Not worth canceling a trip for, not worth showing up for. I felt something break inside me, but instead of the usual collapse, it felt more like a wall crumbling down, clearing space for something new. "If my wedding was just an insignificant day to you," I said slowly, the words forming themselves as I spoke, "then please don't call me about insignificant things like money problems." "Emma," Mom's voice was sharp now, shocked. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "No, I think that's exactly what you meant. You've been telling me my whole life that I'm the independent one, the one who doesn't need anything, the one who should understand when everyone else comes first. Well, I understand now. I understand that you don't think my life is important enough to show up for." I could hear Sarah in the background, asking what was happening. And then Mom must have put me on speaker, because suddenly Sarah was talking. "Emma, don't be like this. You know we love you. We were going to plan something special when we got back. Maybe a little celebration dinner or something. When you got back from the vacation you took instead of coming to my wedding," I said. "The vacation you're now asking me to pay for. That's not fair." Sarah's voice was getting defensive now. "You make more money than any of us. You live in that nice apartment in Brooklyn. You don't have kids to worry about. It's easier for you. Easier for me. Because I'd worked 60-hour weeks to get my promotion. Because David and I had been saving for 2 years to afford our apartment. Because we'd made sacrifices and choices that led to stability. But none of that mattered to them. All that mattered was that I had money, and they needed it." "You know what?" I said, and I felt strangely calm now, like I was floating above the conversation, watching it happen to someone else. "You're right. It is easier for me. It's easier for me to say no." "Emma, don't be ridiculous," Mom said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she used when she thought I was having an emotional outburst. "We're family. Family helps each other out. Family shows up for each other too," I said. "Family doesn't choose vacations over weddings, and family doesn't call asking for money to pay for the vacation they took instead of celebrating with you." The silence stretched out for what felt like forever. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice cold now. "Fine. If that's how you want to be, Emma. But don't come crying to us when you need something." "I won't," I said, and meant it. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and sat staring at my phone for a long moment. David had stopped grading papers and was watching me with concern. "You okay?" he asked. I thought about it. Was I okay? I felt shaky and sad and angry and relieved all at the same time. But underneath all of that, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt free. The first week after the phone call was weird. I kept expecting to feel worse, to regret what I'd said, to pick up the phone and apologize like I always did. But the regret never came. Instead, I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying around a heavy backpack for years, and had finally set it down. David noticed the change first. "You're humming," he said one morning while I was making coffee. "I don't think I've heard you hum since before the wedding." He was right. I hadn't realized I was doing it. But there I was, humming some random song from the radio while I measured out coffee grounds. When was the last time I'd done that? When was the last time I'd felt relaxed enough to hum while doing mundane morning tasks? Work felt different too. I wasn't constantly checking my phone, waiting for texts from Mom or Sarah that would inevitably stress me out or require me to solve some problem. I actually ate lunch at my desk instead of spending my break dealing with family drama. My coworker Jessica commented that I seemed more focused, more present. "You've been killing it on the Morrison account," she said while we were waiting for the elevator. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." But it wasn't that I was doing anything differently at work. It was that I wasn't doing all the extra emotional labor I'd been carrying around for years. I wasn't mentally composing responses to passive-aggressive texts from Sarah. I wasn't worrying about whether Mom was mad at me for not calling enough. I wasn't trying to figure out how to help with whatever crisis was happening that week. The evenings were the best part. David and I started cooking together again. Really cooking. Not just throwing together whatever was quick and easy. We'd put on music and dance around the kitchen while the pasta boiled. We'd sit on our tiny balcony with glasses of wine and talk about our days, our dreams, stupid things we'd seen on the internet. "I feel like I'm getting to know you all over again," David said one night while we were walking through Prospect Park. "You're more yourself, if that makes sense." It did make sense. I was more myself because I wasn't constantly trying to be the version of myself that my family needed me to be. The responsible one, the understanding one, the one who fixed everything and asked for nothing in return. 3 weeks after the phone call, my college friend Rachel came to visit. We'd been friends since freshman year, but we'd drifted apart over the years, partly because she'd never really liked my family. She'd witnessed too many phone calls where I'd hang up stressed and upset, too many canceled plans because Sarah needed something, or Mom had some emergency. "You look amazing," she said when she saw me. Like, genuinely happy. What's different? I told her about the wedding, about the phone call, about cutting contact with my family. I expected her to be shocked, maybe to tell me I should try to work things out. Instead, she just nodded. "It's about time," she said. "I've been watching them treat you like garbage for 10 years. I kept hoping you'd see it." That stung a little, but she was right. How many times had Rachel listened to me complain about my family's behavior, only to watch me make excuses for them and go right back to the same patterns? How many times had she bitten her tongue while I explained away their selfishness and neglect? "I always thought family was supposed to be unconditional," I said. "Like, no matter what they do, you stick by them because they're blood." "But it wasn't unconditional for them, was it?" Rachel asked. "Their love came with conditions. You had to be the responsible one. You had to understand when they put you last. You had to financially support them when they made bad decisions. That's not unconditional love, Emma. That's a transaction." She was right. I'd been so focused on being the good daughter, the good sister, that I'd never stopped to ask whether they were being good to me in return. And the answer was clearly no. That night, after Rachel went back to her hotel, I sat in bed with my laptop and did something I'd been avoiding for weeks. I looked at Mom and Sarah's social media accounts. There were no posts about missing me, no mentions of family drama. Sarah had posted a selfie with the caption "drama-free zone," and Mom had shared some inspirational quote about toxic people. Looking at their posts, I felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, no longing to fix things. Just a kind of distant sadness, like looking at photos of people I used to know. Maybe that's what healing looked like. Not a dramatic reconciliation or a big emotional breakthrough, but just the gradual absence of pain. The slow realization that you don't miss the chaos as much as you thought you would. I closed the laptop and curled up next to David, who was reading some thick biography about a baseball player I'd never heard of. He looked over at me and smiled. "Good day?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and meant it. Really good day. 6 months later, I barely recognized my old life. Not because everything had changed dramatically, but because everything had become so much more peaceful. David and I were planning our first real vacation together, a trip to Ireland that we'd been talking about since we started dating. Before, I never would have been able to take 2 weeks off without worrying about what crisis might happen while I was gone, what emergency phone call I might miss. Now, the only people who had my vacation itinerary were David's parents and my friend Rachel. It felt strange at first, having such a small emergency contact list, but also freeing. I didn't have to worry about Mom calling me in Dublin because Sarah had run up her credit cards again, or because she'd gotten into another fight with her landlord. Our apartment felt different too. We'd redecorated over the spring, painting the living room a warm yellow that made everything feel brighter. I'd taken down the photos of family gatherings that used to make me sad every time I looked at them, replacing them with pictures from our honeymoon and artwork from local artists we'd discovered at the Brooklyn flea market. The biggest change was in my friendships. Without the constant drain of family drama, I had so much more energy for the people who actually cared about me. I'd reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with, started having regular coffee dates with Jessica from work, even joined a book club that David's sister-in-law had recommended. "You're different," David's mom, Linda, said one Sunday when we were having dinner at their house in Queens. Lighter, more relaxed. Linda had become the mother figure I'd always wanted but never had. She asked about my work because she was genuinely interested, not because she needed something from me. She remembered details about my life and brought them up in conversation weeks later. When I got a promotion at work, she sent flowers to my office with a note that said, "So proud of you, sweetheart." That's when I realized what I'd been missing my whole life. Not just a mother, but a mother who celebrated my successes, instead of treating them as resources to be exploited. A mother who showed up for important moments. A mother who made me feel valued instead of useful. The only time I heard about my biological family was through my cousin Jake, who would occasionally text me updates. Mom and Sarah had apparently told everyone that I was going through a phase and would come around eventually. Sarah had gotten a new job at a marketing firm in Boston and was doing well, according to Jake. Mom was dating someone new, a guy she'd met at her book club. "She asks about you sometimes," Jake texted me one day. "Wants to know how you're doing, but she's too proud to reach out directly." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I'm doing really well," I wrote back. "I hope she is too." And I meant it. I didn't wish them harm or unhappiness. I just didn't want to be part of their lives anymore. And I didn't want them to be part of mine. It was a clean break, the kind you make when you finally realize that some relationships cause more pain than joy, no matter how much history you share. The strangest part was how normal it felt now. I used to think that cutting off family was this dramatic, earth-shattering thing that would leave me feeling guilty and broken forever. But it wasn't like that at all. It was quiet and gradual, like healing from an old injury. You don't think about it every day. And then one day you realize you can't remember the last time it hurt. David and I were lying in bed one night, talking about whether we wanted to start trying for kids soon, when he said something that made me pause. "You know what I love about you?" he said, turning to face me in the dark. "You never make me feel like I have to earn your love. It's just there, consistent and steady. I never have to worry about whether you're going to be there for the important stuff." It hit me then, how different my marriage was from the family relationships I'd grown up with. David and I showed up for each other, every day, in small ways and big ones. We celebrated each other's victories without resentment. We supported each other through challenges without keeping score. We were building something together instead of one person constantly giving while the other took. Maybe that's what healthy love looked like. Not the dramatic, conditional love I'd grown up with, where affection was tied to usefulness and showing up was optional. Just quiet, steady, mutual care. The kind of love that made you want to hum while making morning coffee. Sometimes I wondered if Mom and Sarah ever missed me. If they ever thought about the daughter and sister they'd lost when they chose London over my wedding. But mostly, I didn't think about them at all. I was too busy living the life I'd chosen, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. And that life was pretty wonderful.